Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, President Rodrigo Duterte is set to decide on the fate of the enhanced community quarantine. Are we prepared to ease restrictions, or is there a need for another extension? Test, trace, and treat. That's the government strategy against the coronavirus. We get to know the country's efforts to boost its COVID-19 testing capabilities. COVID-19 Response Deputy Chief Implementer Vince Dizon joins us live. Also, the Ninoy Aquino International Airport resumes its operations this week to receive returning Filipinos. Manila International Airport Authority General Manager Ed Monreal tells us more later in the show. Ease up, extend, or modify. President Rodrigo Duterte is expected to decide on the kind of community quarantine to enforce in parts of the country. That includes Metro Manila. Mayors from the National Capital Region have agreed to make no specific recommendation on whether to lift or extend the lockdown last weekend. Instead, they studied scenarios and will leave the decision to the national government's interagency task force. How will the government arrive at this crucial decision? Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Deputy Chief Implementer of the National Policy Against COVID-19 and BCDA President Vince Dizon. Secretary Dizon, good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Pinky. Thank you.
All right. Secretary, the President is expected to announce his decision today, supposedly, on whether to lift or extend, modify the enhanced community quarantine. So far, what would be your recommendation?
You know, Pinky, I must apologize. I cannot speak to that because the recommendations are going to be made by the IATF, and I think they will do that today. So I can't speak to that as of now. But what I can tell you, that whatever the President decides, it will be based on the best recommendations of the experts, including members of the academe, the private sector, and of course, the Department of Health and the other key members of the IATF. Having said that, there is a very delicate balancing act, Pinky, that the government and especially the President needs to do in the decisions that will be made today or in the coming days. But we want to assure everybody that the President has the best interests of the people in mind and will balance the issues of public health, the economy, and the livelihood of our kababayans when this decision is finally made.
So you're not going to tell me what the best scenario you think we should be doing after May 15?
I think what we want to do is we want to ensure that, number one, the public health of everybody, especially in the areas that are considered hotspots, are protected. Now, that's the paramount goal, Pinky. Everything takes a backseat to saving lives. And this is why I think the more aggressive approach that we have tried to implement under the leadership of Secretary Charlie Galvez in the past couple of weeks has to be implemented with a greater sense of urgency, and I'm pertaining to the more aggressive testing, tracing, and treating efforts, what we're calling P3, which has been launched in the past couple of weeks, and is a partnership between the government and the private sector. So that, I think, is the most important. And the decisions that will be made by the President based on the recommendation of the IATF have
Okay.
that framework of aggressively implementing a strategy of testing, tracing, and treating comes to fore.
Okay. So, very important that you mentioned that, Secretary Vince, dahil kayo ang testing czar. Meron po kayong bagong posisyon as testing czar. So, I really want to talk about that, sir. But, of course, madami ho kasing lumalabas na recommendation. The Manila mayors have three options. They didn't come up with a specific recommendation. The DILG was already quoted as saying, possibly from ECQ, baka magkaroon ng GCQ. Just want to know your thoughts on this, and I hope you can answer me. Is an enhanced community quarantine and a general community quarantine possible in NCR? A mix of
Right now, all
both?
those are on the table, Pinky. But we have to understand they must be carefully evaluated based on the data and based on the recommendations made by the group of experts who are advising both the IATF and the president himself. I think it is very important for leaders to really get the best expert advice, because you have to understand, Pinky, you look all over the world, no country has a foolproof formula to address this and to get out
Yes.
of a enhanced quarantine or a lockdown. You scan the entire globe, and no country has this to a T. And we just really have to rely,
Yes.
number one, on the experts who are advising us, and number two, we have to really take a very cautious approach. But at the same time, we have to have a sense of urgency in the things that we have to put in place, such as the
Okay.
infrastructure that is necessary to trace and treat.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about that testing, to test, to trace, and to treat. You're very busy with this. Secretary Vince, first and foremost, let's get the facts straight. How many tests are conducted now on a daily basis?
Okay, so in the past few days, we increased from an average of a little less than 5,000 tests per day in the past couple of weeks. But in the past few days, we hit anywhere between 7,000 to 7,300 tests per day. So just in the past few days, we increased our actual testing per day by 50%. Now, are we happy with that? We're not, because we are still far off from the global best practices of above 10,000 tests per day. And the goal, Pinky, is to increase our capacity. Take note, the word capacity is very important, because lab capacity has to go up for us to be able to perform our tests better. But it is not the only factor involved. No? Right now, our lab capacity is at roughly 12,000, but we're doing about 7,000 to 7,300 tests per day. So we still have to maximize our capacity moving forward, because this is a very complex system thinking, no? But we
Okay.
have to not only increase capacity, but also increase our actual tests per day and maximize capacity. So the goal is by May 15, we will have a capacity of about 15,000 tests per day. And by May 30, a capacity of 30,000 tests per day. A capacity of 30,000 tests per day already puts us at par with the best in the world. And I'm talking about countries like South Korea and other countries in the world. Now,
Having
does that
having seen
automatically
though, Secretary Vince, having seen though, let me interrupt you there. Having seen and being part of the task force, sir, we're at 7,000 now. You're hoping capacity increases to 15,000 by May 15, sir. That's a week, 4 days from now, and then 30,000. Frankly, sir, is this doable?
Yes, it is. It is, Pinky, because it's not just the government that's doing this. This is a whole nation approach as advocated by the president. You know, in the past month alone, the Philippine Red Cross added 8,000 tests per day capacity to the total national capacity. No, and that's just one non-government organization. And now, with the new labs, both of the national government and the private sector, we are confident that we can get to our goal of 30,000 by May 30 lab capacity. Now, the bigger challenge, Pinky, is to maximize that capacity. And that requires a lot of efforts down to the LGU level. You noticed,
Right.
Pinky, that in the past week, we set up these swabbing centers. No? These centers where we have health professionals who extract specimens from our kababayan, no? Prioritizing our OFWs who are here, and later on prioritizing the local government units. So the efforts are multi-pronged, thinking. They involve the national government, they involve private, involve non-government organizations such as Red, and they also involve our local government units. So this is our challenge, but I think with everybody's help, we can get this done.
So, Secretary Vince, just to clarify that, we are testing right now a little more than above 7,000 per day. Ano po? Itong sinasabi niyo pong 7,000 per day na testing daily, that includes, sir, please correct me if I'm wrong, the national government, the local government, and Red Cross. Is that correct, sir?
It includes everybody.
Okay, everybody.
It includes
All right.
everyone.
So, okay, that includes everyone. So all the work of the Red Cross and also the LGUs is included so far. We're still at a capacity of 7,000. The question then, Secretary Vince, would be, we need to understand the situation because we test, but we need to process those tests. We're going to talk about that right after the break. And also, of course, the swabbing centers that Secretary Vince Dizon is talking about. We'll be taking a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. Still with us, Deputy Chief Implementer for COVID-19 Response and BCDA President Vince Dizon. Secretary, so I want to continue on from where we left off. So if you're saying that we can test over 7,000 a day, but our lab capacity, the one that processes the tests, can take up to 12,000. Ibig sabihin, sir, we have the capacity to actually do more tests because the labs can accommodate them.
Absolutely right, Pinky. But like I said, no, the testing for COVID-19 is a very complex process with so many moving parts. No? First, you've got to get the specimens from the people based on the testing protocols. No? And that requires a huge effort at the ground level, meaning at the LGU level. No? So let's say I'm a mayor, no, I've got X number of probables and suspects. I've got to find a way to get the specimens from all of those and then bring them to the laboratories. And when they get to the laboratories, they've got to be processed in a very complex way, requiring equipment, supplies, trained personnel. So the system is very complex. So what we're trying to do, what we've been trying to do, is really do an end-to-end accounting of all those steps and processes and find a way to make them more efficient. For example, for swabbing, which is a critical component, because if you don't swab, you have nothing to test. That's why we created these mega swabbing centers, not only to assist our LGUs in generating or getting the specimens from our kababayans, but also to test the more than 20,000 OFWs who are in Metro Manila right now and who are undergoing mandatory quarantine. That's a lot of people thinking to swab and test. That's why we created these swab centers to do that more efficiently and to immediately send those specimens to our laboratory. This is really meant to help our people our OFWs especially be more confident, and to also allow the LGUs where these OFWs reside to accept them. No? Because I know you've heard that there's a lot of problems in the past where a lot of our OFWs coming home are not being accepted by LGUs. But with the new protocol and with the testing that we're doing for them, they will now have an easier time getting home.
I understand. Secretary Vince, I need to clarify this because there is talk and even some netizens were tweeting me that ang sinasabi niyo ho kasi yung capacity ng labs po natin 12,000, ang tinetest lang po natin 7,000. But how come there is talk, sir, that ang number one, just two things, sir. Ang laki daw ng backlog at number two, meron daw ilang mga testing centers na hindi na po tumatanggap ng mga results. Is this true, sir?
Unang-una po, no, totoo po yan. Malaki po ang backlog. No? And malaki ang backlog because in the past few weeks, our lab capacity was low. It was only when additional labs were accredited and got online, such as the Red Cross, that our lab capacity went up. And this is why lab capacity is so important. Because as the test or the swab specimens come in, if you don't have enough lab capacity, you're really going to have a backlog. And that backlog is actually very transparent. It's in the DOH and Gov website. No? So we make no excuses about that, and we're very transparent about that. This is why there needs to be a sense of urgency in getting lab capacity up to a very, very high level. So now, when specimens get to a lab, that has to be processed, and that requires supplies, that requires trained personnel, and that requires a very sophisticated system. No, so now we all know about supplies, but there is a global problem of supplies. No, there's a global problem of testing kits, extraction kits, and all of that. No, so what we need to do is really manage these supplies in order to ensure that our laboratories always are operating at close, if not at maximum capacity. So now with the additional lab capacity, we're trying to get the backlogs from some of the labs, which are mostly the initial government labs that accredited in the past few weeks, and then start bringing those specimen backlog to the new labs, especially those in the private sector. So that's what we're doing now. It's a back.
Okay.
But we have to solve that problem.
Yeah. Inaayos, basically, sir, sinasabi niyo, inaayos niyo po yung backlog. Kung saan nagkakaroon ng pila ng mga resulta, nililipat niyo po doon sa ilan sa mga, I know there are about 22 laboratories right now. All right. So, again, the swabbing centers are Palacio de Maynila in Rojas Boulevard, MOA in Pasay City, Anderon College in Taguig, and Philippine Sports Stadium in Bulacan. Sir, just as a last question, we've run out of time. Are all 4 swabbing centers now operational?
Not yet, Pinky. The Palacio de Manila is operational already. It's been operating for the past 4 days. The MOA Arena and the Enderan are completed, but our AFP and PNP are now in the process of finalizing their protocols there and getting the necessary training to more efficiently operate those facilities. But apart from the swabbing facility operational, our Philippine Coast Guard is already busy swabbing, getting the swabs from our OFWs by sending teams to the various hotels and quarantine centers where our OFWs are already. So despite the other centers not yet in operation, tuloy-tuloy po ang operations natin on the ground. Everything is being done in parallel.
All right, Secretary, that's a big challenge for you, of course, to be able to be the testing czar. We wish you luck, sir, and we'll speak to you soon again. Maraming salamat po kay Secretary Vince Dizon.
So much, Pinky. Thank you so much.
All right, coming up, some inbound international flights are getting the green light to land in Manila. That's beginning today. We talk to Manila International Airport Authority General Manager Ed Monreal after the break. All right, now let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Manila International Airport Authority General Manager Ed Monreal. GM, welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Ma'am Pinky, and to your televiewers. Good morning to all.
GM International inbound flights are expected today. Darating na po, pinayagan na po ngayong araw. Ilang flights ho ba ang will be arriving today, Monday?
Well, if we're talking about flights, Pinky, there are about 40 flights scheduled today. But out of the 40 flights, there are only 2 passenger flights that are arriving with passengers on board. The rest are all cargo flights that are coming in.
These 2 flights, GM, saan ho sila galing?
Yung dalawa ko, yung isa is galing Los Angeles, which is Philippine Airlines flight. Tapos may isa pa pong flight na British Airways. I don't have the origin, but it's coming from, I think from the US, I think also.
Also. So how many passengers are you looking at, sir? Maybe 400?
Thereabouts, ma'am. Thereabouts. A little over 400, combining the 2 flights that are arriving.
So, because ang dami pong gusto umuwi, GM,
Opo.
just to be clear to those who are watching us right now, sino ho lang ba ang maaaring makauwi?
The same people, the same passengers which were allowed before the temporary restriction.
I see.
Sila pa rin po mga Filipinos at yung diplomats na kasama po dun sa exemptions, sila pa rin po ang papayagan pag-uwi pa sa Pilipinas.
Kasama na rin dyan yung mga permanent residents tsaka yung mga pamilya po nila.
Opo.
Okay. Sir, I hope you can clear this for me. I read somewhere that meron po kayong schedule ng flights on a weekly basis, parang Monday to Thursday. These are chartered flights. And then the rest of the days are the other flights. Is this true, GM?
Yes, ma'am, that's true. Pinayagan na po ng NTF National Task Force na there are 2 days in a week na pwede pong magparating na chartered operation. That is basically on a Monday and Thursday. The rest of the week will be allowed yung mga commercial flights po natin na magsakay ng pasero papunta ng Pilipinas dito sa Manila, provided may kulatilla ho. Ang maximum ho is total is 400 passengers.
A day ang darating po?
Kada araw po. Yes, ma'am. All days in a week.
Kada
400 regardless na chartered or regular flight. Commercial.
Okay, that's the maximum capacity in a day that NAIA will be allowing to enter. But of course, sir, we're talking about all NAIAs 2, 3, and 4.
Sa ngayon po, Ma'am Pinky, we're just operating at Terminals 1 and Terminal 2. Ang Terminal 2 po ay para sa mga chartered operations. Ang Terminal 1 is a combination of charter and likewise commercial regular flights.
Okay. GM, very quickly, your protocols are in place, sir. Is there going to be testing done in the airport?
Yes, ma'am. The one-stop shop that has been created early on are the ones in charge for the screening protocols. Nandiyan, it's a composite team. Kasama po dyan ang PCG, andyan po ang OWA, andyan din po ang DOT, ang OTS, pati po ang Manila International Airport. So basically, at any given day, 400 muna po sa ngayon ang allowed na dumating.
All right. Thank you to MIAA General Manager Ed Monreal. Thank you for your time, sir. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.